What's going on, family? Welcome to another episode of Financial Freedom. I am your host and accompaniment on this journey, Derek Brown. Look, 'tis the season to be thankful, so happy holidays for you seasons. Greetings and all that good stuff. This is actually the last episode in season 5. Can you believe it? Next episode is gonna be season 6, y'all. We there, we doing it. All right, so thank you for that. Had to say thank you for that. We started in the midst of a pandemic and to inspire and inform, and y'all hung out with us. We went from 1 shows to over 35 shows and millions of views across the world. So thank you for that. I couldn't say thank you enough. Please keep following us and looking at our shows on one word, actually, at the Hope TV. The hook is just one word, at the Hope TV, all caps, one word. Look, we have a great episode for you all today. We're actually following up on a part 2. Last week we had 2 phenomenal people on the show. One of them is my co-host, the other one is my guest, but I sneak in some questions for both of them. No, but so check it out. We have Miss Paula Watts. She is multi-millionaire, has been doing this thing for a long time, and now she's turned back around to help teach other people how they can do it as well. She is the CEO of GPI, Government Procurement Innovators. She has trained over 350 individuals since opening her business in 2015. She has gotten millions of dollars in SBA dollars for development programs. She's a former business opportunity specialist. She's mentored other businesses. She's conducted over 800 seminars for over 10,000 businesses. She just wrote a book, but I'm gonna let her tell you about that one, because it's a nice little title she got on there. But my co-host, it is also phenomenal. I'm running out of moisture. This is how good this stuff is. Look, she is a preacher extraordinaire. She is also an author of a book. She is also the executive pastor. She's also going through a PhD program. She's also a winning woman and successful woman in her own right. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome both Paula Watts and my co-host, Pastor Jennifer Carter.
Good evening. I'm so glad to be hanging out with you, Derek, on the Financial Freedom Show on Hope TV, man. Thank you for having me.
Very
And
welcome
thank
indeed.
you, Derek, for having me back. I appreciate you all always thinking of me and having me participate with your members and audience.
Well, look, if you're going to keep on giving us that good stuff, we got to make sure we get a little bit more from every now and then. So, shameless plug time. Miss Watts, tell me about this book.
I'm releasing a book December 18th entitled That's Crazy, Recognize Crazy and Run. And primarily it is about some of my challenges, survival, success, faith as I ran that first business in the 90s. So hopefully it's going to impact, empower, and teach others that you're not alone. We're all in this together.
I like it. Pastor Carter, why don't you tell us a little bit about this book right here that I have gifted to people and have one myself? Tell us about 31 Days of Winning.
Well, thank you, first of all, for supporting Winning Women. 31 Days of Winning is really about recovering from hard things, because no matter how much money you have or how much education you have, everybody goes through something. And so 31 Days of Winning, it's basically 31 affirmations or devotionals that I wrote to get myself out of my own depression, out of my own feelings of defeat. And so my hope is that when you read it, it helps you to kind of get your energy up, get your motivation up if you're enduring something that's hard.
I love it. It sounds like your books actually complement each other.
Yes.
Did you tell us the title of your book, Miss Watts? What was the title of your book?
That's Crazy, Recognize Crazy. And the reason I entitled it is because a lot of times we're in situations where you'll say, well, that's crazy. And you don't know how you ended up in that situation. And so for
Right.
me, I had to evaluate the relationships I was involving myself in,
Mhm.
because sometimes people with their issues bring
Mhm.
the combination. It doesn't work because I have
Right.
my own issue and you bringing your
Mhm.
issues together. It
So
doesn't
do.
work. So I need to understand
Mhm.
what works and not pull and get caught up in other people's madness.
Mm, mm, mm. So let's start there. Let's start right there. So there are many times we talk about running a business, and a lot of people think about the numbers. They think about, the money. They think about the stuff that we can manually track, right? But a lot of people don't think about the intangibles. And as a Black woman in the 90s who would eventually become a multimillionaire, what were some of the intangibles that you had to grow and mature in order to create this kind of financial freedom that you have now?
And what aspects, can you repeat that? When you're
So,
referencing tangibles, give me an example of what you're looking for.
got you. So when I think of a business owner, right, I think of long nights, early mornings. I think of, having to be the first one at the business and the last one to leave, perhaps. I think of dealing with the math of it. I think of managing the money, but I don't think a lot of us think of the internal fortitude, like the ability to get up and do things, the emotional quotient, the what those things that push you to keep doing this. So I'm wondering what intangible, perhaps emotional assets, spiritual assets, intellectual assets you developed over this time that allows you to become a multimillionaire, because there are some things in your head that have nothing to do with that paperwork. I am convinced that you have learned some things that no one can sell or put on a piece of paper. There is some intangible stuff that
Uh,
you
uh,
matured at the time to be this person.
well, I say again, it was a process. And again, I say often, we as Christians will say we walk by faith, but when the faith is tested, do we really do we really believe that God is going to carry you through that situation? And for me, it was still understanding that He had my back, regardless when I was doubting, when I didn't want to be here. I went through severe depression after I closed that
Mm,
business. And the reason I went through the depression, because I knew at 25, God had already told me that I was going to own a business
okay,
and I was going to be a leader of His people and a steward of His money. And
okay,
so by 35, I won my first $1 million contract. By 40, I was a millionaire. By 45, I
wow,
closed the business. And so for me, I felt I had failed God,
wow,
that I had failed Him, and I was ashamed. So that was part of my depression,
wow,
um, and understanding that God carried me through that for this purpose and His purpose. And
right,
so often depression will make you think it's your fault. Um,
right,
Everybody's they don't understand.
mm,
And when you're dealing with depression, and I think a lot of Black women and men as a
mm,
culture, we don't talk about it. We just put the
right,
face on. And
right.
really, even in church, I'm just doing just fine. And we train
I'm blessed and
ourselves.
highly favored.
Right.
We train ourselves, and that's not healthy.
Right.
And we've got to find ways. And again, I'm a advocate of therapy, someone
Mm.
else that can help you walk through this process, because it's hard to do it by yourself.
So here's what's so interesting. It sounds like you turned right around and became what you needed while you were going through that process, because you've turned around and began to mentor other businesses. You've turned around and began to help other people kind of see their way through that journey. Did you find that when you started that first business and you had to close it down, you get into that depression, were there a lot of people there to support you, or was it just you and God? Did you feel like you were supported by the community?
I had a circle of sister friends that, again, when they saw that I couldn't get out of the bed, they was praying for me. And
Mm-hmm.
because when you get in that state, you don't even know what to pray. But
Gotcha.
for me, to help me was to do something positive.
Okay.
So again, when I closed that first business, I had $400,000 of debt on my back. And I didn't know what my next life was going to be. I was there for 10 years.
Mm.
So I started volunteering with SBA, because I'm also strategic,
Okay.
as a score counselor. And so when I start, and that's a volunteer mentorship program that SBA
Okay.
offers as one of their resource partners.
I was just
And
about
when
to
I
ask you what that was. Go ahead.
and when I started volunteering each week and telling people, you don't want to do this, this is what I went through, people were
Mm,
looking at me saying, "Oh, you know something." Whereas in my mind, I thought I was a failure because I didn't reach my goal. My goal was to build that business up and sell it by 50. So
mm.
when I had to close it, it's like, okay, well, what's my new goal? I don't know.
Right.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Jermaine Dolly, Mr. Hello Dolly himself, and guess what? You're tuned in to Tea and Worship with my homies, Mignon and Corey. Keep it out, y'all.
Hey y'all, it's Candy West, and you're watching Tea and Worship with Mignon and Corey.
It's your boy James Fortune, and you are watching my favorite news show, Tea and Worship, with my sis Mignon and Corey.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
As far as actually being a part of the fraternity versus wanting to be in the fraternity, would you say that your outlook on your environment is different?
Actually being in the organization now, you're exposed to everything.
This is the most serious thing that I have ever been a part of. When we say this is a serious matter, we are not playing.
So it sounds like you developed, you walked in with an unwavering confidence that, look, I got to do this. You had a plan, you had a vision, you had confidence that this is what you're in your plan. But then you also had faith in God that God was going to have your back. It sounds like even when you dropped off that cliff into depression, you still had someone there who was going to, a sister circle, as you called it, to have your back, to be able to, pray with you and talk you out of bed and keep pushing you. And those, I think, are the intangibles that a lot of us don't think about. Because oftentimes when we get a vision, and some of us, I got friends who are entrepreneurs, and when I tell you, you can't tell them nothing. They're gone. Like they just go. And sometimes I realize that they don't let anybody keep up with them. We're walking, they running. So we're like, yeah, and then when we do catch them, it's because they've slowed down a little bit,
And for me, excuse me, and for me, it felt like you, when you're at that level, I had again 40 employees, you got a family, people depending on you. Um, and for me, it was a relief to get rid of the wealth because at the same time, I went through a divorce. So
wow.
I went through terminating a partner, a divorce, having to move 16 times because I was
Wow.
having to get rid of all of my assets, not knowing where I was going to lay my head.
Wow.
And really not necessarily have the foundation, I would say, of most Black people growing up with the church, because my background was in Catholicism, and they don't necessarily teach you biblical scriptures in the same way they do in other churches. So um, I just believed in God. I just kept hearing his voice. Just keep moving. It's not about you. And not let the depression keep saying you're a failure. Nobody, what do you know? And
Right.
those are the thoughts that you have to always battle with and make sure you don't stay on that other side because that cave is not good.
I believe you. It's Pastor Connor, did you have something?
Yes, can I jump in there?
Please do.
So I agree with my co-host. Paula, you have such a wealth of like wisdom and so much that you can share. I want to kind of focus in on some of your counseling work with SBA. You probably have seen it all. So my question for you is, what can we say for that woman who's watching, whose business folded due to the pandemic, who was in a position like you where they had to close? What are some steps maybe, or maybe one step that you can give that woman who's watching, who's saying, I've lost everything. What can I do to get back on my feet?
That's a good question.
Understand the lesson. Every failure, there's a lesson. And I would not trade the lessons because those lessons make you stronger. And if you have the vision, if God placed that vision in you, He's got something else for you. And every experience you've gone through is for whatever steps He's already ordered for you. Once you understand that your steps are already ordered and stop trying to fight what your steps are or what you thought it should be or when it should be, then you're in a
Mm-hmm.
better position. You're not stressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about women in their 20s and 30s, right? You talked about just how much of a businesswoman you were at just 35. So, what are some things that women can do in their 20s and 30s, right? So that their 40s, 50s, and 60s can be a better time and a less stressful time financially for them.
I would say have a goal. I'm about the 3, 5, 10 year goal. So for
Mm-hmm.
me at 25, my goal was at 30. I wanted to make 30,000. This was back in the 80s and 90s, so that was that for me that was a lot of money. So it was setting those instrumental goals. Again, I knew my goal in the end was I wanted to own my own business. So I never stayed with any company no more than 3 years. So
Mm-hmm.
each company, I looked at it as a job for my end goal that I would apply to my own business because I wanted to control my own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
That's some good advice. Derek, what would you add? I mean, I can't add that.
Look, I get caught up listening to y'all talk. I'm so sorry. Let me ask you this: while you've been on this path, let me ask: has there been people who were gatekeepers to your different levels? Um, were there men that were gatekeepers that tried to keep you out of certain spaces? And if so, how did you navigate around those circumstances?
That's a good question.
It is interesting because for me, my background coming from North Carolina and raised as a police officer's daughter, I
Mm-hmm.
always had a strong father figure. And so when I started that first business, I was very strategic
Mm-hmm.
in choosing two men. And I
Mm-hmm.
never looked at sexism along the way. What I looked at more so was the racism because that's what I experienced going through
Gotcha.
college and through the different companies I worked with. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, when I was hired in the in SBA, I was the only black female there, and that
Wow.
was actually a good experience because
Okay.
men is not necessarily catty. I don't do catty. men men tell you exactly what they need and keep it moving. Whereas
Mhm.
working with sometimes women, we're emotional. We got to bring people in to bring on our side, and it was understanding the game. It still goes back to our emotions. We have to remove the emotions in how we interact with each other and how we interact in business.
Mm-hmm. Got
That's
you.
pretty good.
Got you. That's
Yeah.
always interesting to know, because there are some times where I would assume that, and I have seen in my own experience how men have moved to keep people out of certain spaces. So sometimes I wrongly make the assumption that men are acting as the gatekeepers, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's other women or other people of our own ethnicity that are the gatekeeper more than anybody else is. So that's always fascinating.
Absolutely. And even through this business, bringing on men, I'm not sure. The women tend to do the work. The men want to dictate or not necessarily get their hands wet or in the dirt. Men
So
want
you
to.
saying we too busy trying to be pretty, and the women are too busy doing the work?
We're doing the work. We're doing the work,
Oh,
and
goodness gracious.
I have the data to show it through my
Oh,
program.
ouch. I don't, you know what? I don't like this question anymore. We're about to move on. Anyway, so
No, but what I found personally, again, I would like to say I'm a child of the civil rights, is that I feel like the black men have lost their voice, and I want the black men to step up. We're tired. It's like you're in the background and pushing us forward, and that's not the order. The order is the man and then the female, but we got to do what we have to do. We can't sit and wait. But in the meantime, we like for y'all to at least step in and help along the line.
so
And
let's
be
talk about
support.
that. Let's talk about that. What ways should we be stepping in to not only support but help in this area?
Well, I don't have children, but I do hear it from my students that are dealing with children, just offsetting some of that balance. Um, letting letting them let that wife or girlfriend take the time out for themselves, because if we don't have self-care, we're not good for anyone, children,
You're right.
husband, nobody.
You're right.
So allowing them that time, being considerate of that, it's not always up to them to make the decision of what needs to be what you have to eat for dinner. And I think for me, in going through the marriage and dating, I think when you have successful women, that sometimes can be intimidating.
Mhm.
Um, the ex-husband would call me, I'm working on $30 million proposal, asking me, what are we having for dinner? I don't know. Take something out the refrigerator. I don't know at this point. So
I
it's
got you.
understanding we're working together.
Got you. Pastor Carter, you have something?
Yes. So if I can ask a question about that, I think a
Yeah.
lot of women, they feel they have to choose between success or fame. And
Mhm.
so, Paula, I understand that you have had a relationship transition, but there were seasons in your life, I guess, where it did work. And so, can you give some advice to a young female African American entrepreneur who's watching and saying, do I have to choose? How can I make romance and relationships work while I'm on my grind? What would you
It,
say
it,
to that?
it's a balance, and you have to find someone that have the same value system and same ambition. Um, I remember when I was going through therapy session, because I started the therapy session with the business when I was going through the two divorce, and my counselor was saying, "Well, you've chosen people who don't have your same value system." So that was one of the mistakes and repeated mistakes I kept making. It was choosing people who was valuing money, and that was not my primary value. So it's
Thank you for
making sure that you have the same value system.
Thank you for sharing that.
Gotcha.
That made
Gotcha.
me feel like I'm an old auntie over here, and I'm not that old yet. Now.
Look, Auntie Paula, don't be acting all sedity now. We want all the juice. I want all the details. Don't be acting all sedity on me now.
Well, look, you might not be popular, but my favorite character is Celestial because
So one of the quotes that I wrote down in the book that kind of stood out to me was, "Love is the enemy of sound judgment."
She seemed like a very needy woman. And I can't even respect Andre because how do you prey on your friend's wife while he's incarcerated? Like, I just can't get with that. And maybe I got too invested in the book, That's the
Is love transactional?
What is it? It's so good when you loving somebody and somebody loves you back. You want that and somebody loves you back part.
What is love?
I feel like we just opened up the miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
So that gets into this idea of mentorship, right? That gets into this idea of being able to have someone that would help you kind of understand what's happening. So how does a woman, especially a woman looking for success, position herself to be mentored and find a good mentor?
Good question.
Joining organizations, joining associations, joining even within the church. Again, create a circle of like minds. Everybody's, I think as a whole, and I'm number one, people pleaser. I think women tend to be people pleasers. And we invite people into our circle that should not necessarily be in our circle because we're trying to people please. And that's why I wrote That's Crazy, Recognize Crazy and Run, because I was people pleasing with people that weren't of like minds. So it's key that you find like minds.
So how do you know what a like mind is? And I'm being real basic here because I want to kind of understand. I want people to understand when you say like-minded. If I'm an entrepreneur and I'm trying to go a particular direction, does everybody have to be the same kind of entrepreneur and go in the same direction as me? What does it mean to have like-minded people?
For me, that would be my preference because, or finding someone that's smarter than me. If that's where my goal is, I need to surround myself with people who've been there and understand that. And for me, that was one of the reasons I created GPI, because being a CEO and at that level, it's very lonely because you have nobody to talk to. No one understands what it means to meet pay. You have payroll coming up. You're not quite sure how you're going to meet payroll. So it's finding other business owners who understand your pain and that you can talk with them, because it is lonely at the top.
And I'm curious, and this is one thing that just popped up as you were talking, as being a Black woman at the top, were there any places where your Blackness became an issue for other people, or you felt like it was being used against you at all, especially as a Black woman? And how did you navigate that? Because right now I'm still hearing different kinds of stories, and it's more covert, but it's still there. So when did you have to learn how to navigate those circles with your Blackness?
That really is part of the journey of That's Crazy. Most of my supervisors were white female.
Okay.
And I am 5'10". So as a whole, coming in, you're intimidating by your height.
Gotcha.
But I had to learn early on, I would never let them see me cry or angry, regardless of what they were throwing at me. If it meant for me to keep that fake smile and go outside and cry my eyes out and come back in, it's
Right.
never let them see me in that position. So it's toughen up.
Okay. So never let them see you sweat.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And understanding that at that point in time in my career, I needed their knowledge. So I had, again, one of the companies, again, the one that where I was fired and hired and they cut my salary as I discussed the last time. I knew I needed their knowledge for my business. So again, I looked at every job as a school. What am I getting from that job? And every job that I took, I made sure that I was the best. So whenever I left, there was a gap. There was a gap. Even starting out as a Xerox person in the meeting planning. That was my job. I had to make copies, but I was the best copier they had in that company.
Come on now.
So when I left, it was a hole.
It was a vacuum when you left.
Absolutely. And that's how I left every place.
Okay. Okay. So you went into that situation understanding you needed their information. You never let them see you sweat. And then after that, you became the best at that position.
Yes, but at that point, that's what motivated me to start my first business. Was because again they cut my salary, and again I studied operations. So I saw their weakness and capitalized on it. So I had to become best friends with them so they could hire the company that I found for them that would hire me so that I could make my money back.
Come on, make it. That was so slick. Y'all, if you ain't seen the last episode of Financial Freedom where she tells you how she slick made thousands of dollars back, go back and watch our last episode because she legit made sure she was gonna get paid. I loved it too. It was some West Wing stuff. I don't even know how to describe it. Anyway, but yeah, Pastor Carter, you got anything?
Yes, so real quick, there was something that you said earlier that actually, Derek, made me remember a quote from last episode. And I put something she said today and that together. It sounds like you're saying, as an African American woman, you have to make yourself invaluable to whatever organization you're a part of, right? But then I heard you talk about self-care. So you have to make yourself invaluable, but also don't lose yourself in that process. And make sure that you're still taking care of your health, your mental health, and your physical health. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that when you talk about strategy for winning, strategy for being successful. Make yourself invaluable, do your best work, be the best at what you do, but also when it's time to play, when it's time to rest, do that as well. So I think what I hear you saying is we have to be balanced, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And my balance is hanging out with my friends and just laughing, calling them up, college friends, the people I've met along the journey, and just laughing. I love laughter. That's what got me through the dark days. And somebody coming up and calling and making me laugh about the situation and understand that situation is only temporary. What it looks like today is not going to be tomorrow. And as long as you can keep that in your head and just push through that day, then you'll be okay. You'll be okay.
Wow. Pastor Carter, what'd you say?
Oh no, I said that's good advice. I think we're running out of time. I want to keep going, But I think we're running out of time. So
I think we are actually, but let me ask just this last thing. You're an entrepreneur. I have entrepreneurial friends, but I'm not an entrepreneur. How do I support the entrepreneurs around me the best I can?
Laughter. Take them out.
Gotcha.
Give them laughter. Because entrepreneurship, you're so serious. You're just caught up in that business, on the grind, and you need that balance. Take them out. Dinner. Don't talk about business. Because sometimes we get caught up. We just want to talk about business. And it's not always about business. And it's just creating that support system and providing a safe place. And for me, I think even in this second business that I'm in, God learns how to humble you, meaning I've always been self-sufficient. I've always been independent. And when I got to a point where I couldn't pay my mortgage, God humbled me to ask. I didn't want to ask. Fortunately, I had a sister friend that saw my face and knew something was going on,
Face
and
telling
she
on you.
offered. She offered it, and so what it taught me is it's okay to ask for help, even when you don't like it. That's uncomfortable. And be grateful that you have friends that can support you. I had one of my best friends said to me, "Here's $5,000. Don't worry about when you can pay it back to me. I want you to get 6 months of reserve before you start thinking about paying me back." So surrounding yourself with those people who support and love you for you and there with you, the good or the bad.
Gotcha. I just need somebody to come alongside me and be like, here, Derek, here's some money. Go pay off all them loans and then get 6 months of reserves before you even have to think about anything else but your life. That's different than your example, but I'm just saying. Anyway, ladies, thank you so much for your time. Pastor Jennifer Carner, the preaching machine, author of 31 Days of Winning. Please go get the book. It is on Amazon. It is worth your time. Miss Paula Watts, entrepreneur extraordinaire, multimillionaire coach, valuable resource to our community. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, ladies.
Can I give one more thing I like to put out there because this is
No.
key and critical?
Yeah, go ahead.
The SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan.
Okay.
If you've been in business and have tax returns for 2019, it is key and critical that you go to sba.gov and apply for that loan. That's the cheapest way that you're ever going to get any type of financing, even if you have a bad credit. Your minimum credit score has to be 570. This is the way that we begin to generate generational wealth. That program will end December 31st. So again, if you have an existing business, or even if you're 1099, you're a barber, a cosmetologist, or just a solo, you can apply for that loan. And that's the only way I see us being able to change the generation, because they're giving out a whole lot of money, believe me.
Look here, you should have said this earlier. We about to leave. I'm mad at you now. We should have talked about the see. I'm mad. Ladies and gentlemen, Paula Wise dropping jewels until the end of the show. So
okay,
that's what she's doing. How to Recognize Crazy and Run is the name of your book. When's that dropping?
December 18th. And I have a website, recognizecrazy.com.
Gotcha. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Financial Freedom. It has been a pleasure. Again, happy holidays. Thank you for hanging with us. We're going to be on season 6 the next time you see us. Ladies and gentlemen, like I always say, Be safe out there.